Hello and welcome to the Telltale Cake, where we tell tales with cake and we try to ignore the corpses underneath the floorboards. With me is my dear friend and a master of library science, Caroline. Caroline, I see you're wearing a t-shirt today.
I am wearing a t-shirt today. I wanted to look a little bit younger because we are reviewing a children's book.
I am also wearing a t-shirt. And I'm wearing a baseball cap, which is very odd for me because I do not own a baseball cap. So I'm not sure where this came from, but I've got one, and it's character appropriate.
There we go.
So let's talk about the book that we're reviewing.
Okay, so we are reviewing the first of the very long series, The Babysitter's Club. This is Kristy's Great Idea.
And I wanted to look like Kristy.
Exactly. Yeah.
Kristy is definitely my favorite character.
Yeah. Well, my favorite character hasn't appeared yet, so I have to, wait on that one.
Who was your favorite character?
My favorite character was Dawn.
Ah, California girl.
Yeah, I was not like Dawn, but I liked Dawn.
Dawn's a good character. So this is by Anna Martin. It is the first of many books.
Many, over 100, well over 100 books.
I should have probably looked up how many, but then I started getting into, there were different series and spin-offs. And
yeah, it's complicated. So there's the main series, then there's the Babysitter's Club Mystery series. There's the Babysitter Club, special edition ones. Then they have these that are like Babysitter Club family albums where they have all of these supposed baby pictures and children's pictures of the babysitters when they were growing up. It gets insane.
It just became tiring trying to figure out exactly how many Babysitters Club books there are and which we consider Babysitters Club versus maybe something else that's just a spinoff. So right. I'm going with a lot.
A lot, yeah. And also, Anna Martin did not write all of those. I think she definitely wrote the first 30-something. But then after that, you have basically ghostwriters who wrote the majority.
That's the way to make the money.
That's the way to make the monies. And I will say, as someone who is a Babysitter Club aficionado, you can tell a difference in quality.
I don't think I read that many.
Yeah, no, you can tell a difference in quality. The quality starts to go down. It's sad to say, it just does.
Now, we both read some of these growing up. I think you were more into it than me. I mostly read The Saddle Club, which is Babysitter's Club for horse girls, and I was horse girl. And I didn't really like babysitting, and I never babysat growing up because that would involve children, and I just don't do that. Did you do a lot of babysitting growing up?
I not like the Babysitter's Club did. But I did do some babysitting. It was the main job I had in high school. And I did a little bit maybe 8th grade-ish, but mostly I remember I did one summer where I babysat for this one kid every day, while his parents were at work. And that was easy. He was just this one 5-year-old kid. And then there was another kid. These were all people I knew from church. So it wasn't like I was going into strangers' homes, which we'll talk about. So I babysat for some other children, some of which was more intense because it was more multiples, 3 or 4. I think 4 is the maximum that I did by myself. And then also I did every summer when I was a teenager, it was mandatory to work at my church's day camp. And the way that worked, it was kind of like Vacation Bible School. If you're from the South, you're probably familiar with that concept. And, but we had...
I have feelings about VBS, and I don't want to talk about it.
Ooh, I have so many feelings about VBS. But day camp was kind of like a fancy version of VBS. It was like the Whole Foods version of VBS. It went all day instead of just in the morning, and we would do little excursions to the YMCA or to the bowling alley. And basically every teenager had a little group of kiddos that they were kind of responsible for. And I did not feel like I was very good at it, to be honest.
I have never felt like I am good with kids.
Yeah, so it depends. So I actually voluntarily teach Sunday school now at my church, and I enjoy it, but I think it's because unlike my evangelical past, you don't have to drum up this fake extroverted version of yourself that is over enthusiastic about everything.
I can't be that enthusiastic sarcastic about anything, really.
Right.
Ever.
Yeah, no, I can't either. It's not in me. And so I don't have to do that. I can basically be myself without curse words.
That's probably more family friendly.
More family friendly, but like a family friendlier version of myself. And so I don't have to fake anything. So that actually works out for me pretty well.
I once got my arm twisted into having to teach Sunday school to a class full of 9 3-year-olds. There was no teaching. There was no fake enthusiasm. I mostly just took them to the bathroom and back.
Sure. Well, yeah, at that age, that's what you're doing.
And then they overshare their experiences.
Right.
It was not a good morning.
Yeah.
And it's a very evangelical church, so it's not like you can go get a drink after an hour with 9 3-year-olds, which is, I have never felt so much like I needed alcohol in my entire life.
I will say, if you have a hangover and then you have to work in a church nursery, try to avoid that experience.
Oh, that sounds awful. They're loud at the best of times.
Yeah, try to avoid that experience. I don't recommend it. So yeah, that's my experience with babysitting.
So, way more than I have. So, babysitting. And with this book, we normally eat cake with our books, and we're eating cake today. We're eating a pizza, which is a pie, which is kind of like a cake, and it's thematically appropriate, so it's definitely a cake, and we're not taking any questions about that.
Yeah, no comments necessary.
We're eating pizza cake because a lot of times that's what they do in the books. They have pizza parties periodically with their earnings because these are kids in the 80s and 90s where a pizza party is one of the most wonderful things that can happen to you.
Exactly.
For some reason, people decided when we were growing up that it was a great idea to give us pizza for reading books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I just was learned that if you just read enough, people will give you free pizza.
It's a great incentive.
It is, yeah. It was a good incentive for me anyway. So yeah, you get free pizza. Maybe you get a personal pan pizza at Pizza Hut, which is even better.
As an adult, I do not think that's great. But also as an adult, I can just buy myself pizza whenever I want.
Right. You can just go to the store. It's fine.
I don't even have to go to the store. I can have strangers bring it to me. And now that it's a pandemic and it's perfectly culturally acceptable to do no contact delivery, people can leave a pizza on my porch and then leave, and I never have to see them, and there's pizza, and it's great.
That's living the dream. I can't do that because I'm allergic to wheat, so that's not really something that I can do, but that sounds amazing. There's
a pizza place across the street from my house now that does a gluten-free pizza, and they deliver. So next time you're over, we can indulge in this dream. We can live our 90s dream of together. Pizza. And to make it even more authentic, we should get some little red cups to really imbibe that Pizza Hut feel. But we will not put alcohol in them. We will just drink some sort of soda out of them. We'll just get some Dr. Pepper, and leave it at that. It'll be great. So tell us about this pizza. This is a gluten-free pizza. Oh, yeah. So this is a gluten-free pizza. I did not slave over this at all, though. I literally got it out of the box and stuck it in the oven. Work. Yeah, it works. It's called Against the Grain, and I think it's good. But I'm gluten-free, so, I don't know. What do you think? I think it's pretty good. Yeah. So it's of the gluten-free offerings in the frozen section at Kroger, I think it's the best. And I also like kind of crispy pizzas. I'm not a fan of thick, spongy pizza, so that kind of goes into it too. I think Domino's has a gluten-free. No, it's not Domino's. It's DiGiorno's. Has a gluten-free pizza option, which I have tried, but it's more of a thick crust. I was not a fan. So it depends on what you like, First, we're judging this book by its cover, and we're both about to be super judgmental because this is not the right cover. This is not the cover we grew up with. This is not the cover we expect. It is not okay. We don't like it. This is incorrect. This is someone watched The Jetsons too many times and decided that the Babysitter's Club was set in 1962. It is not set in 1962. It is set in the late 80s and early 90s. And this nonsense, wrong. What it should be yellow. Yes. It should have the Babysitter's Club spelled out in blocks. It should have all the characters pictured. Where are the blocks? There's 3 blocks. No, unacceptable.
Unacceptable. Also, it should have pictures of people on it, like
Yes.
paintings. Actually, I read recently they were paintings done.
Oh, wow.
Because they're being commissioned somewhere, like people are buying them off. Actually,
Of course they are.
So yeah, of course they are. You know what? I'm not ashamed to admit I thought about that and I was like, that would be pretty cool to have an original painting of Babysitters Club. I thought about it for 2 seconds. Anyway, I'm a human being. I make mistakes. So there should be pictures of children who look way too old to be 12.
Yes.
That's what should be happening right there.
And their hair should be incredibly 80s.
Yes. There should be frizz. There should be ponytail holders. There should be headbands. There should be plaid skirts. I don't see any of that going on right there.
There should be a side pony.
Yes, a side pony. Like I don't see any of that.
This is wrong. We're not okay.
Yeah, I would like to register a complaint with whoever designed this nonsense.
I couldn't even look it up. I was too mad.
I don't approve.
It's not like I paid for this because this is from my local library. But
yeah, same. I am glad I didn't pay for it. I would have been upset.
As you should be.
I should be. Yeah, and there's nothing. I don't see anything about Scholastic on here anywhere. Where is the little Scholastic sticker?
I mean, there is like this Apple
thing.
That's
not
no.
That is, but it is not sufficient. Yeah, no. I want to register a complaint. Unacceptable.
I agree. This is not okay.
Yeah, no.
Let's talk about the book itself. Now that we're already cranky.
Now that we're mad. The book itself, so I obviously, we're not the target audience. When I was the target audience, when I was 6, I discovered the Babysitters Club at the local library, took out like the first 5 books because I was that kind of child. And then I read that they were in Connecticut, and me being from Georgia, I didn't know where Connecticut was. And I asked my mom, I said, "Where's Connecticut?" She said it was in New England, which I thought meant they were British. So I spent the first 4 books or so thinking they were in England. And I thought, wow, it's really impressive that Stacy moved all the way from New York City to England. I was confused. I was stupid. I was a dumb child. Anyway, so yeah, it turns out it is not set in England. It's set in New England, and I think canonically the characters are actually really close to Stamford, which is really close to New York City. So they're like within a train ride of New York City, basically.
Which I knew they were in the U.S., but I didn't have a concept of scale of New England because I'm from Georgia. So the idea that you can just get on a train and go to another city in another state in a few hours.
Yeah. Wild.
Like, I didn't really understand that she could just go back and forth from New York. That always just seemed like a major thing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, states down here, you have to drive a good 5 or 6 hours to get to the next one.
What we're saying is we have some issues with geography.
Yeah, we struggle. That's obviously not our area of expertise. So yeah, but the other things were, I remember when I was reading it thinking, wow, these children, because they are, 12, they have a lot of freedom. Like, they are able to just go to the mall, or they didn't really have a mall, but they were able to go downtown
and get some Cokes.
They
could just ride their bikes downtown. And I grew up in the suburbs. Downtown is way too far for a bike ride.
I didn't grow up that far from downtown, but it was not a downtown you wanted to travel to, especially if you were just a 12-year-old on your own. Definitely was not allowed to do that.
Let's talk about that whole 12-year-old thing, because reading this as an adult, there's 12-year-olds. They are going to strangers' houses by themselves.
Right.
Then on the other side of it, strangers are inviting these complete strangers into their houses and leaving them there with their kids while they just go off somewhere.
Frankly, I'm not a mom, but I feel like if I was a mom, I would want to at least kind of know the teenagers that I was leaving my children with. I feel like I would need to know a little bit about them before I just, left my children with them. I don't think I'd feel comfortable with that.
The 80s were a wild time.
They were a wild time. And, I will admit, I did some babysitting when I was kind of younger. But, again, I knew the families. They knew me. They knew my parents. So it wasn't like a total stranger situation.
Now, I have a friend who grew up in Connecticut. So I asked her, turns out she did do some babysitting. She did go to complete strangers' houses.
Wow.
Like, sometimes her parents would just drop her off at a stranger's house, and then the stranger would drive her back at the end of the night.
Oh, my word. Wow.
Now, she was 16, which I guess is a little better than 12.
That's it's a little different, yeah.
But it's still just, it's wild, especially, this is the 80s. The Satanic Panic has fully panicked by now. And this is Connecticut. Like 100 years before this was written, in 1890, Connecticut had my absolute favorite moral panic of anything that has ever happened in the U.S.
Wait, what was that?
The New England Vampire Panic.
Wait, what?
This is awesome.
I'm sorry, I know nothing about this. Please tell me.
All right, so there was an outbreak of tuberculosis in Connecticut.
Okay, like you do.
Now, tuberculosis tends to stay in families or work through families because it is so highly contagious, right? So if you get it, you're living with somebody else, they will probably get it. One of the symptoms of tuberculosis is people start looking really pale and wasted away. So you'd have someone in a family who died. Other people in the family look very pale and wasted away. Now, Connecticut, I am told, is cold in the winter.
I've heard this, yes.
I've been there once in the summer. I don't know. And the concept of snow just seems weird to me as a normal thing.
Powdery stuff on the ground? Anyway?
What is this? We don't do this.
Yeah.
So snow happens, apparently, and also it can be very cold. So you'd have these recently deceased people, and people would start going, maybe these other family members are being preyed upon by vampires. So then they would dig up the person who first died of tuberculosis. And if they'd been buried over the winter, it was quite possible that the corpse would still be in great condition because cold.
Oh,
and
my.
People didn't really know that much about how decomposition works.
Oh, no.
So the logical conclusion was they are vampires.
Not that they're Catholic saints?
No, they are vampires. We are way too Protestant in the U.S. for this.
Okay, sure.
So we go straight to the vampires.
Cool. Okay.
So what people,
like you do.
Yeah, so they would burn the bodies of the deceased vampire and then have the members of their family with tuberculosis who were wasting away drink the ashes mixed with water to fix their tuberculosis, which, spoiler alert, does not work.
Only logical, though.
Yeah, it's not the weirdest thing I've heard about people doing.
Yeah. I've heard weirder about medical history.
So, yeah, basically a bunch of people who died of TB were just dug up, burned, and their ashes drunk to try to fix tuberculosis, which that's not really how you fix tuberculosis.
I was about to say, it didn't really work out very well, probably.
You need antibiotics for that.
Yeah.
And this is 1890. I would like to point out, I had an ancestor in the Civil War who was dismissed for tuberculosis, and no one thought that he was a vampire. This is 1860. But
to be fair, in 1860, there was a lot going on. They probably were too concerned with, like, actual real-world problems to be concerned about vampires.
That's true. There was a lot happening. But 1890, in New England, vampires. So
why not?
So this is the Connecticut that I think of. Granted, I stopped reading history around 1900, so.
You're missing a lot. So
Am I really?
Yeah, you are. I mean, spoilers, don't look into the 30s and 40s. You won't be happy with what you find.
Got it.
But yeah, so this, I got once I got a little older, I got the impression that New England is where heathens live. Like non-Christians, you know? Well, no, seriously. Okay, so my Baptist school, we sent a mission trip up to preach the gospel to the heathens in Massachusetts. They went, like, door to door and, yeah.
I have no response to that.
This is a thing that they did. You know, other people go on a senior trip. My school, you go on a mission trip to the heathens of Massachusetts.
Amazing. Love it.
Yeah, no notes. So, so that was my impression of New England, was that it was where, you know, the non-Christian heathens live. So, I will say, though, I did enjoy the books a lot when I was a kid, obviously, or I wouldn't have kept reading them.
Me too. I even read several of them, and I don't like babysitting.
Yeah, see, there you go. So I was obsessed, and I had a good friend of mine and I, when we were like all of 9 years old, were like, we should start a babysitters club. And our parents were immediately like, you're children. They didn't get very far. But yeah, it was, I thought it was great. I thought it was great that they were just like making their own money and everything and, yay capitalism or something. And I thought it was great that they had, that they were able to just kind of like go about their business on their bicycles and just, like you do, just go around. Because again, I had like a 2-block radius that I was allowed to go. So, I thought that was fantastic.
It's great.
So yeah. And then I also, though, I do remember thinking that like they must not have very much homework.
Yeah, that too.
And I don't think they did. I don't think they did have as much homework then, actually.
It's entirely possible.
So just to kind of give an idea, so Beth and I, we would have been 12 in like the late 90s, early 2000, like right in that era. So just a little bit after the Babysitters Club. And at least for me, like homework was more of a thing.
I was busy, like, because I also had. So my parents were all fancy, so I had to take music lessons and stuff like that too.
Yeah, I had to take piano lessons. Although
Same.
really, yeah, yay. Honestly, that did like I would practice piano like 30 minutes every day. But I feel like I wasn't that busy. Like I didn't live in the suburbs, so I didn't have as much of a.
It was more of a drive.
Yeah,
Like, I just remember a lot of driving around as a child.
Yeah. I didn't have that kind of experience, but I do remember having seems like a lot of homework in middle school, and so like that it seems like they just didn't have that much homework because they could just like go off on the evenings like on a school night and just go babysit.
Yeah, a lot. Now, all of these books have one of the girls as the central character, and we learn something about her life and her struggles. So for this book, it's Kristy. And Kristy, her main conflict here is that her divorced mother is dating again, and she does not like her mom's new gentleman friend.
Right. For reasons that really aren't clear, like he seems perfectly nice, but I think it's just more the idea of like her father abandoned them and she doesn't really want this new guy in their life, and she's really envious of his being a good parent to his children. So there's a lot of like she doesn't want to be involved at first with her future stepchildren at all, and that kind of thing. I think there's a lot of envy going on.
I think she's having a lot of feelings that she doesn't have a healthy way to deal with, so it's coming out as just anger against one person.
Right, exactly.
Which, I mean, she's 12.
She's 12. She doesn't know. She's not going to have had healthy coping skills at 12.
Yeah, I mean...
No one does.
No. I mean, I don't always have healthy coping skills now.
Exactly. Like, you can't expect it. So the other thing, you don't really get this with this one because it's the first one, but with the Babysitters Club books, they make it so that you could pick up any book and kind of figure out from there what's going on. So they always have, I used to just skip these when I would reread them. They always have a chapter that basically just explains who all the babysitters are. And they do this mostly through their clothing. Like they talk about in extreme detail what each person is wearing at a Babysitters Club meeting. And Kristy is kind of the one that we're, representing today. She is, quote, not like other girls.
She's so not like other girls.
So not like other girls. She's going to discover around 18, 19 that she's a lesbian, calling it now. She
is that canonical or is that just a, like...
It's basically canonical. Like, so Anna and Martin, of course, did not come out then because 80s, things were a little awkward. She came out as queer later in life.
And so she's revealed that Kristy...
And so she's basically revealed that, like, Kristy is at least queer.
Oh, hell yeah.
So, yeah. She couldn't really do that in the 80s. Not so much, but yeah, so Kristy's queer. But yeah, so Kristy's like, wears a baseball cap. She's into sports. She likes T-shirts.
She's got a loud mouth, not a lot of tact.
Yeah, no tact whatsoever. She's very driven. She's very goal-oriented, and she's very much into telling other people what to do.
Speaking of, this is the start of the Babysitters Club, and the way it happens is that Kristy watches her mom make a whole bunch of phone calls to try to find a babysitter for Kristy's little brother. And Kristy basically has, like, your cartoon light bulb light up And so she goes and talks to her best friend Marianne about it via Marianne lives next door. They have a flashlight code where they flash.
Super cute.
Yes, it's adorable. It made me want to have a flashlight code with someone.
I know. There's no one I could have a flashlight code with, but it's very sad. But yeah, it's great.
As an adult, it just seems very inefficient, but
they didn't have cell phones.
What
are you going to do?
You're going to make a complicated flashlight code, and
right.
It's going to be great. So she has an idea. She's going to start a business. She's going to have a bunch of babysitters in the same room. So you make one call, and suddenly you get connected to a bunch of people. Ideally, one of them will be free. It's not a bad idea.
Not a bad idea. So she immediately wrangles up the people that she knows. And her other friend, who she's not as close to, Claudia, lives across the street.
Claudia is like the other girls. So.
Claudia is like the other girls. Although I gotta say, kudos for Ann and Martin. She does not. So Claudia is Japanese American, and Ann and Martin, I think, goes to extremes, or not extremes, but she goes to great lengths to make sure that Claudia does not seem like a kind of stereotypical Asian American kid. She's not like someone who's all about grades. She's not like, oh, little Miss Perfect. She's not like the stereotype. Instead, she's super creative. She's into art. She's into dressing kind of wild and wacky in the way that you only could do in about 1986. One detail I remember is that she likes skeleton earrings. So yeah, that's Claudia, and Claudia meets this girl named Stacy, and Stacy is from New York City.
So she's got this aura of the big city, which I didn't quite understand why that was a thing, but I guess in small town Connecticut, New York City seems...
It's a thing. I grew up thinking Atlanta was really glamorous, so, there's a question of scale. So, okay. Yeah, so Stacy dresses very more kind of glamorous, kind of sophisticated. She seems older than she really is. She and Claudia, one thing that Kristy talks about a lot is that Kristy and Marianne are not into boys.
Also, they don't wear bras yet.
Yeah, they don't wear bras yet. They're not into boys. They still play dress up with dolls and things like that. And Claudia and Stacy are deeply into boys.
They're just pubescing a little bit faster.
Yeah, they're just, developing a little faster, yeah. And I think Kristy is kind of feels insecure about that.
Yeah, there's a little bit of tension there about the different rates of development that they're going through. And that's a real thing.
Yeah, which I feel like is just really honest about life as a 12-year-old.
Yeah, I think it felt really real to me as someone who has been a teenage girl you're going to develop at different rates. And...
Yeah, there were the girls who developed really I did not develop very fast. And so I always felt I always felt oh man, these other girls are just so much more mature than me, so.
As an adult, I'm they're all 12. But
they're children, whatever.
Yeah, whatever. So anyway, they've got these 4 people, and within a week, they have a club set up. They've advertised in the newspaper, they've passed out flyers, they've got a place to meet, which is Claudia's room, because Claudia has her own phone, which was a major thing.
Right. It's impressive how much they get done, and specifically Kristy. She's the real engine behind this, and she makes sure that things get done. She is okay, we're going to do this and this and this and this, and just makes it happen in a way that I am just astounded by.
There are light bulbs in my house that have been out for over a year.
I have furniture that I picked up off the side of the road that has sat in my car for more than a month. Kristy would be so ashamed.
Yeah, we're not good at getting things done.
No, we are not. We are not Kristy. Let it be known. The one that I most identified with was Marianne. And Marianne is just kind of the shy, bookish one. Very much not Kristy.
Still a great character, though.
Still a great character. I would have dressed up as Marianne, but I have very short hair, and I was I can't do the ponytail, the pigtails. Wouldn't have worked, so it's fine.
Kristy's still a great character.
Yeah, Kristy's great. They make a babysitters club. They do have a little bit of a mishap where somebody thinks that they are a dog sitting club, and Kristy has to dog sit. She doesn't love that. One of the fun little elements that Martin brings to this is that Kristy has them do a logbook, and they have to write about their experiences. And so
It's so organized.
It's so organized. But the way that Martin illustrates this is through having like the girls' handwriting. So you have all their different handwritings in there. It's really cool. And because I was a nerdy kid, I used to try to imitate their handwriting. This is embarrassing. Anyway, so
Whose handwriting were you best at?
I remember I really liked Jessie's handwriting. She's a character that comes up in the later books. It was really like flowy and gorgeous. And I was a calligraphy nerd, so I could do it, I thought that was just awesome, yeah.
I always have had terrible handwriting.
Yeah, well, Claudia also had terrible handwriting, so you were in good company.
So we've got a babysitter's club. It's firing on all cylinders. But wait, there will be drama.
There will be drama.
So much drama. It centers around Stacy and her mysterious, glamorous New York City. Now, Stacy is, as Kristy tells us, very thin. Stacy also tends to refuse food that's being passed around at club meetings. She always talks about how she's on a diet. Kristy says, "Oh, you're thin. You don't need to be on a diet." This felt uncomfortable to me. As a child, I was told by my mother that it's not quite nice to notice what other people are eating.
We were brought up as good Southern women. You just don't do that.
Yeah,
you don't comment on what other people eat. That is just wrong. I mean, you might go home and talk about it behind their back, but you do not talk about it to their face.
And when you go home and talk about it behind their back, you'd better say something like, "I love her to death, but did you see?"
Yeah, no, she's a wonderful person, but so you have to couch it like that. So the fact that Kristy is up here, and I got to be honest, Kristy's a Yankee. And she has no tact. So it's kind of like, oh my gosh, does your mother know that you're on a diet? Does your doctor know that you're on a diet? It can be very unhealthy to be on a diet when you don't need to be. And I'm just like, Kristy,
shut up,
child. What are you doing?
We don't say that.
Yeah, we don't say that. That is not how you behave. Like, all of my Southern instincts rose within me. I was like, what is this?
So with that in mind, Stacy takes a lot of trips out to New York City, and there's also a lot of times where she'll say she's not available for babysitting jobs and not provide details, which is fine. It's a very healthy thing that in your job you can take off without having to give a reason for it.
Boundaries are important.
You do not need to tell your employer the details of why you are sick, and it is illegal for them to ask.
Or, Kristy.
Right. Who was kind of their employer.
Who was, let's be honest, she really was.
Yeah. So, boundaries.
Boundaries.
But then there comes this weekend where Stacy has said she's in New York, but Marianne sees her in the car around Stony Brook.
Right.
Drama.
Not in New York.
Not in New York. The deception.
Right. No, she was lying to them, clearly.
This threatens to tear the club apart.
Especially because, see, part of the thing was they were going to have this pizza party to celebrate their success with the Babysitters Club, and Stacy couldn't come because she was in New York. But now it turns out she was just avoiding them.
Kristy confronts her about this with all the tact that is in her. The amount of tact that is in Kristy is zero.
Right. No, zero tact. Zero tact.
There's a big fight. And it kind of splits down the middle, as one would expect, because Kristy and Marianne are best friends, and then Claudia and Stacy are friends, and they're not.
Yeah. And this split, this happens over other books as well. Like, they have this split multiple times, and it tends to go exactly like that.
Which is kind of reasonable. That's the social dynamic here. So there's a couple days where they're all not speaking to each other. Club meetings are tense. Shifty eyes.
You could cut the tension with a knife. They answer the phone, and then they say, who is available? And someone is just like, well, I am. But only on that day.
It's I'm having way too much fun with the drama in this.
Oh, yeah, so much drama. But I mean, I feel like, again, honestly, Martin's being realistic. When you're 12, everything means so much. Feelings are so big, and drama is so big.
And you have no context. Like this, I'm sure this bothered me when I read this as a child. Like I would have felt this a lot, but
yeah,
as an adult, I'm just like drama.
Right, exactly. Oh, that drama. Yeah, these children that are, upset with each other for this minor thing.
No, they manage to have a huge reconciliation. Kristy apologizes. They have their pizza party. And then Stacy confesses her deep, dark secret. She has diabetes.
Oh, no. I will say, so maybe this is another time context thing. I remember reading this and thinking, why is that a big deal?
Same.
And it seems like in the books, as I recall, when it goes back and it's from Stacy's point of view, she loses friends over this when she's in New York. It's a big reason why they moved. Like, everyone deserts her. She loses friends. And it's just like, what? Like, how is she losing friends for becoming diabetic? It is wild.
Mm-hmm. I don't understand it. I also don't have diabetes. I don't have this experience. But
Right.
It just seems so odd.
Yeah. And I mean, I will admit, so I got food allergies when I was in middle school, and I did feel very embarrassed about it, and I didn't lose friends over it, but I remember feeling embarrassed about it. But I felt like diabetes would be different because food allergies, it was kind of like, ugh, like you're already a nerd. Now you have food allergies? Gross. Like, like it just seemed like a final nail in my social coffin, which was...
How dare you be both intelligent and read books and be allergic to wheat?
It was a real problem. I mean, there wasn't much farther I could go down, but I hit that floor. I really did. So I mean, I do get that, like, difference is not cool when you're that age. So maybe that's where they were coming from. But yeah, I don't remember feeling that way specifically about diabetes. So I don't know, maybe it's just that, like, there was more awareness by the time we came along, which was honestly not that much later, but maybe there was just more awareness. So, but yeah, apparently in the world of the Babysitters Club, diabetes, oh my, real problem. So
Gasp.
yeah, gasp, exactly. I will say there is there in a later book, there's a whole situation where Stacy is taken to, like, a kooky doctor who, like, wants to put her through, like, special, not her regular no sugar diet, but, like, special diet and, like, special exercise things and, like, all this stuff to try to get her off of having to take insulin. And her parents are, like, really into it. And then they finally ask her what she feels like. And she's like, I just want to go back to my normal life. And it's very instructive to me and somewhat ahead of its time, in that it's looking at, parents being into, like, these kooky diet, kind of things, and the child just being like, I just want to live my life.
It's really nice that Stacy is able to advocate for herself.
It is. Yeah, it is.
That.
And I felt like, to be honest, most of the kids are kind of able. I mean, Marianne's situation's a little more complicated because her mother's dead and her father's really strict. But most of the kids are kind of able to advocate for themselves.
And they do talk about how the club is helping them to advocate for themselves. Like,
yes.
Marianne is initially upset because she's not going to be allowed to use any of her earnings for buying pizza at a party.
Right.
Like, she just has to invest it all, but she manages to have a conversation with her strict dad where it's like, maybe she could just invest and save half and use the other half as she wants. And then Claudia manages to negotiate with her parents.
Yeah. So I felt like that was really cool. And you'll see in a later book that's from Marianne's perspective where she really, like, takes command of a situation where a kid gets really sick and they have to go to the hospital. And she's way more responsible than I would have been at 12. And yeah, it's really, she really uses that to her advantage to be like, hey, you know what? Maybe I don't have to wear braids all the time, So it's pretty cool. Yeah.
I like that it is about 12-year-olds, and it feels like the stuff 12-year-olds would be concerned about. And besides this issue of they have so much freedom, it feels very real for the big fights.
The kind of things they're concerned about, the kinds of, like, issues they have with school and friends, and all of that feels very real to a 12-year-old experience.
Also, my friend from Connecticut, who's a bit older than me, pointed out that, when she was growing up, she didn't really have a lot of books for 12-year-old girls.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this is really like kind of the first wave of books that are sort of for 12-year-old girls,
Right.
for young girls about their problems.
Right, that aren't necessarily just like about Black Beauty, the horse, or, fantasy or whatever, which I was into those too, because again, nerd. But it is nice to also have books that are just about your experiences.
Just slice of life for 12-year-olds.
Right, exactly. So I think that's cool. We stan Anna and Martin.
We do. On that note, it's probably time to wrap up and rate this on our sugar scale. So, of course, the S in sugar stands for sexiness, and just know they are 12. There is no sexiness.
There is no sexiness.
Moving on to uniqueness. Again, this is, one of literally hundreds of these books.
Oh, yeah. I will say, judging it at its time, it's more unique.
This is true. It's also now people would probably complain about its wokeness because it's got a very diverse cast.
It does. People would complain about its wokeness because, especially for its time, again, and especially as it goes on, there is a Black character.
In Connecticut, no less.
In Connecticut, right. At some point, there's a Jewish character, like some of the later books. There's a Japanese-American character, and there's even a point where they talk about the internment camps. It's obviously you don't have certain things. You don't have any talk about like LGBTQ issues, but again, 80s and 90s, like
she's doing the best she can.
She's doing the best she can, and especially as someone who could be outed, you have to think about that too. She has to be really careful about that. So, it's really for its time, it's really great. It's a diverse cast, and it's not just a bunch of white girls,
It's great. And gender, it is all about 12-year-old girls and how they interact with each other in the world.
Yeah, and it's not just all about boys and, even the girls who like boys, it's not all about the boys.
I do like how big the cast is because a lot of times when you have the one strong female character, she ends up being not like the other girls.
Mm-hmm.
And there is space in the world for girls who are like the other girls.
Right. There's space for someone who's a tomboy. There's space for someone who's really shy. And there's space for people who just like clothes and like to shop. And that's not really... Kristy judges it, but you kind of get the idea that Kristy's being kind of judgmental.
Yeah, there's a lot of 80s movies that teach us that the girls who are really popular are just kind of nasty.
Bad. Right.
Like Heathers.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
I love that movie, but
Heathers is great, but it does teach that. And I don't remember so much because they end up kind of hanging out with their own set, but at least at first, Claudia and Stacy are hanging out kind of with the popular girls, but they're still good people. You don't get the impression that they're bullies or anything like that.
They're not going to pretend like they don't know the less popular girls like Kristy and Marianne.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that was gender. We also have axiness. Is this an axe for the frozen sea inside us?
It really isn't. No.
It's not.
It's not. It's a children's book. It doesn't have to be.
0 axes. It's fine.
Yeah.
You shouldn't give children axes anyway.
Yeah, no. I had some children's books that were kind of more axes for the soul, and they tended to be Victorian era stuff. So, some of that gets intense. This is not intense. It's light, and it's fluffy, and it's fine.
I recently learned about a book of German nursery rhymes called Der Struwwelpeter.
Oh, boy.
And it's all these stories of children misbehaving or doing bad things and dying in horrible ways in rhyme.
Yeah.
So, if you suck your thumb, this giant, terrifying man with a pair of scissors shows up and cuts your thumbs off.
Sure. When I was growing up, we had the Andersen's Fairy Tales as the original.
Oh, dear.
And it was an illustrated book. I'll have to show you sometime the illustrations. What I remember was, first of all, the story of the red shoes.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. Which, if you're not familiar, she ends up dancing until she has to get her feet cut off, and that's because she feels vain about her red shoes. Andersen had a thing about women and shoes. first of all. He just did.
Wasn't there another character who had to dance in red hot slippers until she fell down dead?
Something like that. Yeah.
That might have also been Grimm.
That might have been Grimm. I didn't know Grimm as well. And then there was the one where the girl stepped on a loaf of bread that was meant for her parents because she didn't want to get her shoe dirty. And then she sank through the mud and ended up in literal hell where she had flies and other like creatures all over her. And she was like chained to this loaf of bread. Good stuff.
Cool. So, I would rather have children read stuff like this. When I was around 10 or 12, I was gifted an anthology of cat stories, which is a great gift for a bookish kid. I want to stress that. The anthology, however, contained Edgar Allan Poe's The Black Cat, which is not necessarily something I would recommend giving to children to read without a warning.
We also had a collection of Edgar Allan Poe stories that I got into as a child.
I think reading Poe at a too early age explains a lot of my personality.
I was about to say, yeah, certain things are starting to make sense as I think back about this. But yeah, I also did have more of the just healthy, children babysitting and then having pizza parties type of reading material.
It's nice. Even as an adult, it's kind of nice, which brings me to the readability portion, which is... So in this edition, it is like, where are the page numbers? Are there page numbers?
I don't even know that there are page numbers.
There they are. I was just in one of the afterwards.
Oh, okay.
So this is 156 pages. It's fairly large print. I think I actually read this originally when I was studying as an ebook, so I missed the wonderful handwriting things.
Yeah, see, you got to have the handwriting.
Especially because there's the, dotting the I's with little hearts thing on some of them. It's very cute.
Yeah.
But it's short. It's very short. It's very pleasant. The drama and the unpleasantness doesn't last long. We forgot to mention it, but Kristy decides she likes her mom's gentleman caller after all.
Right. Yeah.
And it all works out fine in the end.
It all works out. You're not left with a feeling of, oh, no, what's next? The books are quite self-contained, kind of like an 80s sitcom. And so it's very readable. It's meant for children. So, yeah.
It's just a nice experience. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I wish that my adult books had the quality where I knew there would be a happy ending, because sometimes you just know something bad is coming.
Yeah, no, sometimes you just need that light, happy ending. Sometimes you need the book version of the British Baking Show.
You do. And this kind of is filling that niche for me.
There you go.
Even though I'm not the target audience.
Right. There you go. So, yeah. Sounds good.
All right. With that, thank you very much for joining us, Caroline.
Thank you.
Is there anything you'd like to tell our readers?
If you have children, introduce them to the Babysitters Club books. They might really enjoy them.
Maybe don't send them to strangers' houses at 12.
Probably not.
Or do. I'm not judging your parenting. Like and subscribe.